Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. Yay, you're here with me again for another episode, and I couldn't be more grateful for your presence and willingness to look within, heal, and expand the way you think, maybe some of your beliefs and what you feel. You're really getting curious about who you are, and I want to offer you a free gift. If you haven't already gotten it, I'm going to give you a free journal. If you go to www.kristenboyce.com/free resources. And it will be emailed to your inbox and you can use it over and over and over. And that might be helpful for this episode because I'm going to be talking about getting feedback from your children, specifically as a parent. I'm going to give you personal examples and why this is one of the most important elements of parenting. There's several components of this that I'm going to outline. And if you can work on this piece, taking feedback, digesting it, processing it, and then taking action and making change and growing, you will be a more secure human being and have better relationships with your children, grandchildren, and other people in your life. You will transcend generational trauma and disrupt it. I'm passionate about this topic as a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work with so many couples and families, parents, children. As a child myself, I have children, and I have learned so much along the lines. First, I'm going to recommend is I'm going to have you get a book. If you are open to doing this work, Parenting from the Inside Out by Dr. Dan Siegel is an important book for you to get because it has you look at your own way you show up as a parent, how you were raised, what was your relationship with your mother and your father, your grandparents. This is not to pick on anybody. And the second book is Homecoming by Dr. John Bradshaw. I have recommended these two books over and over and over. And I really sat down praying over what was I going to talk about today, kind of meditating on that. What was going to be the topic? And this came through pretty strongly that we need to have more conversation around taking feedback from our children. So I've got teenagers, and as they become adults and have their own children, have their own issues, especially if they're in therapy themselves, they are going to come to you with issues. They're going to give you feedback. If you've allowed them to separate and individuate, which is around 17, 18, they start coming up with their own thoughts, beliefs, feelings, opinions. They have their feelings all the way through. And if you can tolerate that they can question things, be curious about things, and not be afraid of that, you will create a more secure family system and relationship with your children. So one of the things in our family system that I've allowed because of my own work is to speak truth with love and grace, to say how you feel. And sometimes the grace part is gone because we're dysregulated. They're dysregulated. And the one thing I've modeled consistently, because I'm not a perfect parent, let me disclaim this, is ownership, accountability, responsibility, and repair work. We're going to talk about all of those things because when someone gives you feedback, the ability to handle the feedback, healthy feedback, to tolerate the discomfort that that brings to you, potentially the hurt and shame that triggers within you, that it's already there, but that activates in you, and to be able to hold that space for your child is one of the most important skills you're going to have as a parent. And I say it so many times because I do my own work as a parent. I'm walking the walk with you. This is not coming from a place of, I've got it all down. It's coming from a place of, I'm putting this into practice and these are the results I'm getting. I've been teaching clients for 20 years plus how to create healthier family systems, more connected and authentic relationships, and feel more secure within themselves. Meaning I have worth and value I can recognize shame and not feeling good enough. I can work myself through it. It may take some time, and that's how I can tolerate feedback. So I'm going to give you some examples, and then we're going to walk through step by step what is necessary in a feedback loop. So all systems have feedback loops. Open systems can tolerate that feedback, that it can be back and forth. Closed systems, if we're looking at family systems, cannot tolerate feedback. It creates too much fear and a threat response, almost like a fight, flight, freeze response in a parent. If a child questions things, may have a different belief, have different feelings than the parent, and they don't have the ability to be open with how they feel. So open systems means open with feelings. The truth can come forward and it can come to the light and we can handle it. Even if it's hard, brings up fear, maybe some shame of not feeling good enough. It might bring up some anger, some disgust, some sadness, some grief. And the system knows that in order to create the connection and the health, it's necessary to have truth be on the table. A closed system lives in almost a trauma response. It's generationally tied down. It could be culturally. It could be programming, conditioning from decades and centuries, really. And that closed system can't tolerate the openness if it's different than what that system has been programmed, conditioned to have. And so truth doesn't prevail in a closed system. Abuse, secrets, hiding, manipulation often live in a closed system. And an open system has healthy boundaries. They're clear and direct. They can handle other people's opinions as long as, of course, we're taking responsibility for the delivery. There's a high level of ownership and accountability and transparency in open systems. In closed systems, there is blame, shame, fear, oftentimes abuse, again, manipulation, lack of tolerance, insecurity. Open system comes from a place of security, groundedness, centeredness. Not all the time. The people in the system are working on their own nervous systems, noticing their own intensity, which means their body response might be more rapid breath. Maybe they got more intense feelings in their body, maybe more tension, and they can self-soothe. The rigid system is disconnected, where the open system is connected to those body responses, to their emotions. They can sit in the discomfort. Even though it's hard, they can tolerate the pain. A closed system doesn't like to look at the pain, numbs, moves away from, has trouble with truth and reality. They almost live in unrealistic expectations, more control, the illusion of control that I'm going to control another person. I'm going to control outcomes, where an open system accepts there is no control. You allow the person to be who they are, not who you want them to be, who they are. Where a closed system is used to create an outcome, to conform. There's a lot of conformity. There isn't the ability to be who you really are oftentimes. You've placated, pretended, perfected, performed, pleased, projected to try to stay safe. It's important we're talking about open and closed systems because when we talk about feedback, if you're in a closed system, feedback is not tolerated or acceptable. It's a threat to the system. It's a threat to the person and who they are. It's taken very personally. And I'm going to own when I get feedback, I am taking it personally at the beginning because it hurts. Shame can get evoked in me feeling like a bad mother, a bad parent, a bad partner, a bad wife, a bad friend, a bad boss. I mean, the list goes on. It's endless. And I have to take responsibility for that shame. Notice where it's living in my nervous system, my body, and work on figuring out what is underneath that trigger for me. What is at the root of it? That's why I love, you've heard me talk about EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and brain spotting. There's many different forms of therapy, trauma-based therapies that can get to the root of what is going on in your reaction to something. We're reacting rather than responding in a centered way. So let me give you an example that happened a couple of days ago with our family system. I was between my two daughters who are teens, or 15 and 16 at this point, and they were having a disagreement because of the cleanliness of the bathroom, because they share a bathroom. And I'm giving you this example because we think we're just bypassing experiences when really there's something underneath what's really going on. So one of my daughters said, I'm upset. You're not picking up your towels. You're leaving the bathroom a mess. And the other daughter got really defensive, felt shame immediately, felt this disconnection in the relationship. And because I've tried to work on this and we're not perfect, believe me, I want to give you examples so you can relate to maybe not this specific example, so you can start picturing what this looks like. And at the time, I thought this needs to be a repair. There's feedback going on, and we've got some repair work to do because they're hormonal. They also are struggling with feeling good enough. And each of them had their different triggers and personalities. So I took a deep breath and I said, can you handle listening to my one daughter and mirror? If you think about mirroring, we have what's called mirror neurons, like you're looking in the mirror and you're reflecting back to what you hear. Why is this important? This is so important when we're looking at feedback. And I ask parents to do this in family therapy all the time, and they struggle because we interpret what the other person is saying based on my own life experiences, based on what I think I know that they're saying, because this is what they've said to me in the past, based on my own shame and beliefs about myself. I'm filtering this through my own lens rather than attuning to what is actually being said. So very early on, I think they were 1 and 2 years old, we started working on mirroring with each other. And I would have them mirror back what they heard. So here's how the format goes. What I heard you say is that you're really frustrated with me leaving the towels on the floor and how messy I'm leaving the bathroom, and you feel really disconnected from me. Did I get that? What is that doing for this relationship? 1, you feel heard and understood. 2, there's connection happening because you're beginning to feel safer with the person. Now, if I'm saying this and I'm activated and I'm saying, you think I leave towels all over the floor? Immediately, this is not going to go well because the person on the receiving end is too defensive and too activated. So we have to take deep breaths. And then after we've done the mirroring, we go, oh, I can imagine that's really frustrating for you. And then without me prompting it, she said, what do you need from me? This is key. What do you need from me? The other person can't read your mind. It seems obvious. Oh, pick up the towels, clean up the bathroom, but maybe it's something else. And it actually was. It was to feel respected. Okay, what does respected look like for you? To be calm when I tell you my feedback, to listen to me without interrupting and getting defensive. So it was actually deeper than the towels on the floor in the dirty bathroom. It always is. And my other daughter, after she got herself calmed down, I had to do a little intervention on everybody needs to take a deep breath. And then she was able to mirror that back and really understand that she can get defensive and she can interrupt. And it's hard for my other daughter to talk to her because she gets in her shame so quickly. And she said, I will work on being less defensive and listening and acknowledging your feelings. It was a beautiful repair. Now, it doesn't always go like that, by the way. What are the elements of this repair? So let's go through what feedback looks like when you're giving it to somebody or when you're receiving it. So the first thing I want you to remember is, what did you want from your parents? Please float back. And maybe even now, if they're still alive, what do you want from your parents? And what did you want as a child? 1, you wanted a regulated parent. You wanted a present. This is ideal scenario. Okay, I realize this is ideal. Calm, centered, connectable. So what does that look like? That looks like I am making eye contact with you, softening my facial expressions, regulated breath, not defensive, not giving you nasty looks or an intensity, managing my intensity. Secondly, we wanted to be heard without interrupting, without getting defensive. We wanted to know that our parent cared about what we were saying They cared about us. They cared about what we were saying. So it's important that you are in a space or calm yourself down so you can really listen to the feedback that they're offering you. We're going to acknowledge what the other person feels. We kind of walk through that. We're going to mirror back, acknowledge what the other person feels. And this is what we wanted from our parents, to take ownership for our own reactivity, our own emotions, and our own intensity. So what did this look like then for the family system? So then what we ended up doing is we went around, the four of us, my husband, myself, and my two kids, and we ended up saying, what are two things that you're going to own, that you're going to work on consistently? Don't go through a list of 10. It's too many. You won't do it. Go through two things. So what were my two things, you're wondering? I'm going back and remembering. So my two things are, one, my intensity. I call it passion. No, it's intensity. You can perceive it as, I care about something so much. How they perceive that is I'm intense. It doesn't come across, yes, it comes across as passionate, but it's not really comforting. It's not, they want me to be less intense, more centered and more calm, instead of me being so passionate. And not that there's a wrong with that, but there's a time and place for that. And secondly, be more direct in what I'm saying, wanting, and feeling. And I think I'm pretty direct. And I can always get better because there's a little passive aggressive that can get in there. For example, it might be something along the lines of, it's really cold out there. You sure you're going to wear that short sleeve shirt when it's freezing outside? Instead of saying, hey, what are your thoughts? More direct would be, I would love it if you'd wear a coat since it's so cold outside. They get to decide. It's ultimately because they're teenagers, and lots of teens don't want to wear coats. And I have to live with natural consequences. They have to live with the natural consequences. I cannot control everything. I have to release that. So in order to take the feedback so for example, I said the two things and they agreed with that. That was feedback. So feedback isn't necessarily, sometimes it's direct. Sometimes it is asking them a question. Sometimes you're asking them for feedback, not that they need to parent you. You can say, hey, what could I do better as your mom or dad or friend or wife or husband or partner, whatever that looks like. It's important that if the feedback dysregulates you, which it will at times, it just will hurt. It will hit your shame trigger. It'll hit your fear, that you are exploring that through your own work. What does your own work look like? Journaling. You've got to acknowledge the feelings, process it. What is it reminding you of? What shame story are you telling yourself, that you're a terrible mother or father? You're never going to get this right. You're going to screw up your kids. Hey, guess what? Everybody's going to have issues. They're going to have issues because we are human beings. Can you be open to them giving you helpful information so you can help them find healing and do repair work? And you can apologize specifically for the hurt that caused, and then commit to really working on that through your own therapy, perhaps through your own coping mechanisms, such as my favorites, walking, journaling, processing it, naming it, doing body work. It's playing with your pets, listening to music. I mean, the results are endless of that, but facing the truth. Now, sometimes feedback may not align with, and you may not agree with that feedback. It might be projection. But let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, that the feedback is important for you to grow and evolve. Let's just say that this is necessary for the relationship to heal, that you can handle the feedback. So let's take some additional examples. I do a lot of family therapy, and it's one of my favorite things to do because we can repair a family system and then repair a generation. What does that look like? Oftentimes that has me working with the parents on their defensiveness, feeling defensive. So they might shift the blame and go, well, you were yelling at me, and so I yelled back, which I've done as a parent. I've got to own it. And me getting defensive. And so I see parents try to shift blame. Well, if you wouldn't have lied to me, if you wouldn't have done this or you wouldn't have done that, well, that may be true. That's not what we're doing in the exercise. What we're doing in the exercise is mirroring back what you heard, validating the emotion, getting to the root of it. What's really at the root of this connected relationship or this repair that needs to be made? So no, I'm sorry, but take but out of your vocabulary. If I hear that from couples, I hear it so much and from parents. I love you, but, or I'm sorry, but you, take it out. Just, I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry. I can see how me yelling and getting super dysregulated or just dysregulated was scary to you and hurt you. And I can see why you shut down and didn't want to tell me things. Oh, there was a third thing that I needed to work on for my kids. So we had two. And then you know what? If we want to open it up to more, I can handle it. And they're like, no more teachable moments. I think I've shared that. I love me a good teachable moment. They don't so much. I just think this is an opportunity for me to get it in there. And sometimes those teachable moments, it's not the time. It's not the place. They just need to release what they're feeling. For me, just to be present to it. Get off my phone. No phones in these feedback. Put the phones down. Look them in the eyes, softly, kindly, tenderly. Take the feedback. Take your deep breaths. Don't interrupt. Watch your defensiveness, because the defensiveness wants to protect you from the hurt and the discomfort that you're feeling. And the shame, it wants to protect you from feeling the shame. Well, you already got the shame. You have to take responsibility for your own shame of feeling bad, terrible, your own avoidance of avoiding having hard conversations, and then it building up over years and years and years and years. And the parents that have the most trouble come from programming of, that's not how I grew up. I would never have said that to my mom or dad. I would never have done that. I would never have told my parents how I really felt. Well, here's the truth. How did that work out for you? How did that work out with your relationship with your parents? You held back. You placated. You said things and then it played out in your marriage. I promise you, I see this placation. If you placated your parents because you wanted to avoid conflict, you took it into your marriage. You took that pattern of placation in your marriage, and you almost can play it out with your kids, or your kids will become the placators because they know you're going to get so dysregulated. They don't want to tell you anything, and there will be distance. And when you blame your children for dynamics, you will not have connection with your children. You won't. You've got to go to root issues. Was there a trauma at birth? Was there attachment issues where maybe they had a medical condition, or maybe there was something medically that went on early on, a NICU visit, a surgery, not to scare you, because those can all be repaired. They can, I promise you, attachment wounds can be healed and repaired. When the parent and the child or the child is an adult, you can still repair this. But when the parent is emotionally present, that is reparative work. One nervous system to another nervous system, one regulated centered nervous system to another is so healing. Are you emotionally available? Can you handle the big emotions? Can you handle the big feelings? Sometimes I feel like I want it out. I'm like, check, please. This is too hard. And whatever you do, don't put this on your children to help you feel better. Stop asking them for advice on what you should do or how you should handle this with your partner or your husband or your wife, or that's not their job. That is not feedback you're seeking. Do not get that feedback from your children. If there is a dynamic between you and your husband, wife, partner, that is between you two. Do not pull your children into that dynamic ever. And I do mean ever, because it's not their role. You're disrupting the roles. Feedback between a child to a parent is appropriate when regulated. That when you allow, especially as adults and as children, like I have teens and they're giving me feedback all the time because I want to create a safe, secure environment. I don't want them to pretend to give me an answer and then they're not transparent and going, I know they're teens, but they are living a life of transparency, accountability, and I'm living that life. I'm being accountable for my actions. I'm doing the work outside of this dynamic in my own therapy to take responsibility for my reactivity, to go, ooh, why was that so intense for me? Ooh, why did that hurt me so bad? Ooh, why did I get so angry about that? Why was I so dysregulated over that? Why was I so sad and grieving over that? And it may be transition in the relationship. Maybe they're going off to college and then they're coming home and then leaving again and there's emotion there. But I'm owning that. I'm owning and I'm connected to my own experience. So when they give me feedback, I welcome it. I really do want it. I'm not saying it's not hard, and I'm willing to take responsibility for my part. Now, sometimes that isn't my stuff, and I'm done enough work where I can delineate that. And then they can also, this is the beautiful part of feedback. When I'm willing to look at my stuff, it gives them courage and permission to look at theirs. And they can quickly go, oh, yeah, I did that to manipulate. Now, this is because we've been doing this for so long. Does it always go like that? No. But when we're regulated and that prefrontal cortex develops even more, which is the CEO rational part of the brain, I see children, I see kids, I see adults in the family system being able to take responsibility. If you are closed because you've been in trauma and you're self-protective, you still have boundaries. Boundaries are in open, healthy family systems. You have clear, direct boundaries. That's a staple. That's essential. Closed systems, if you can't handle the feedback, you're going to shut it all down, put it back into the body, or you're going to numb it or move away from it. That's why it's so important to tolerate feedback, to know that you can handle it, you can be with it, and it hurts sometimes. I mean, I've had grief bursts over it, and know it's tapping into my inner child work. It's tapping into my small parts that feel maybe shame, and maybe there's some, like, I feel bad, I feel unworthy, I feel unlovable, and our children cannot make us feel loved. It's not their job. We are here to love them. Icing on the cake, yes. When we are able to expand ourselves, love flows in and out all the time. There's an abundance of love, and we can handle feedback, positive or not so positive. So when I have adult families and they're giving each other feedback, we work a lot on taking a deep breath, noticing what parts of you are closing off or getting defensive, the ability to listen, to mirror back. And the mirroring back is really interesting because a lot of times people don't mirror it back what the person said. They totally put it through their own filter and they didn't mirror it back. So I often tell people to say verbatim, if we're struggling with this, what you hear. Then we're going to offer empathy. So I can imagine you feel sad if the person hasn't expressed how they feel. If you're giving feedback, so let's go down that route. That's if you are the listener. If you're giving feedback, I strongly, highly recommend doing this after 20 years. Use an I feel sad, scared statement. I feel, not with a thought in there. I feel like you is not, that's a thought, not a feeling. You've got to distinguish between a feeling and a thought. I work a lot on this with family systems and couples and communication. For an effective communication, I feel sad. Do not start with a you always, you never, you this, you that. I feel sad, but you. Just eliminate that. I feel sad and scared because I'm afraid we're growing apart and I really want to be close to you. And it reminds me of, this is the other sentence I love because it's so much ownership, brings emotion to my eyes. It reminds me of the dynamic I had when I felt disconnected from my mother. I'm making this up, but you get the idea. That takes the accountability to another level. And what I need is for our phones to be put down, for maybe soften our tone of voice and to connect and notice those bids for connection. I was specific. I said, and I feel in there. It reminds me of, and I really want you to encourage you to find out, what are you afraid of? If you add that in, I'm afraid, I feel afraid. Most of what we're feeling is driven by fear. Fear of what someone thinks of us, fear of abandonment, rejection, judgment, shunning, you name it. The fear is real in relationships. And then I need blank. I feel, it reminds me of the fear I have, if you didn't already name it in the beginning, and what I need is. So if you need a structure to give feedback, that's the feedback. And Conscious Discipline is another parenting book. If you have young kids, it's called Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline. And it's all about how to self-regulate as a parent, allow feelings to be expressed authentically in real time and processed and witnessed. We know trauma happens, thank you, Dr. Peter Levine, if we do not have an empathic witness in real time. That's what we're offering our family systems, is an empathic witness even if somebody's giving you the feedback, I'm witnessing it. I'm taking my deep breaths and I'm taking responsibility for my tone, my behavior, my facial expressions when I'm communicating and when I'm receiving. Very hard to do because I can't see my own face, but I can connect to my body. If there's an intensity in my body and I'm not grounded or centered, it's going to come across. So I gave you several resources. We'll put those in the show notes. And I want to encourage you to really be able to tolerate feedback as a parent, as a grandparent, as a friend, as a partner. That's important feedback that has, especially as a parent, that has truths in it. Please don't deflect it. Please don't shift blame it back onto your kid. Please don't. You will not be able to repair and reconcile pain that didn't get tended to as a child. And when you can see things as deeper than they are, that's going to be a gift to you. When you deflect, avoid, shame, blame, and judge, there will not be healing repair work done. It will impact your connection with your kid. Adult kids, an estrangement is a deep lack of ownership and willing to look at someone else's pain. A deep lack and willingness to look at your own pain and to look at someone else's pain. It's too hard for you. So you got to do trauma work. Essential to do trauma work around this. Please see a trauma therapist. I do my own therapy. And so I'm a big fan. And listening to podcasts, doing your writing, doing your journaling, meditation, movement, breath exercise. We can go on, doing your deep breathing, centering yourself. It will pay dividends for generations. So don't give up. I know it's hard. It can be done. Stay with it. Even when you want to throw in the towel or you think the person isn't receptive, they may not be, but still do your own work regardless of the other person. Be healthy enough to make a repair by acknowledging your part in how you might have hurt another human. Even though I might not see my intensity, I have to stop getting defensive around it and start acknowledging how that might feel to my kids. Even though I call it passion, it's not. To them, it's a block in connection. Do you see that? To them, it's a block in connection. What is blocking your connection? What part of you is blocked because you don't think it's fair or just or right? Take ownership of your part as a parent. Humble yourself to see the pain, acknowledge it, to be able to tolerate it. If you can't tolerate your own pain, you're not going to be able to tolerate your kids' pain. There'll be a limit for you, especially if you feel like you're the target of it. They're blaming you for their pain. You're not going to be able to tolerate that. And here's the truth. You have caused some pain for your kids. I've caused pain for my kids. I'm not that naive. I know I have. And when I can be real about that, then acknowledge it. You can still have boundaries. You can still say how you feel. Try to see where they're coming from without getting defensive. Let me know what you struggle with on this topic. I'd love to know because we all have struggles. I'm on it with you. I'm in it with you. And let me know what the biggest struggle in taking feedback from your kids is. And then maybe we'll do a part 2 answering your questions. So you can follow me on Instagram at Kristen D. Boyce or Facebook. You can always go to the website at kristendboyce.com and get the journal /free resources. And you can get on TikTok, which I do not know what I'm doing. It's Kristen Boyce, Boice, and Pinterest and all the places. But tag me, let me know what you're struggling with on receiving feedback from your kids and how to handle that and how to process it, how to be with it and grow with it. Because they're our greatest awakeners. They open the door to parts of you you never knew needed to be opened. They are my greatest awakener. I've done more work around my children, them just being who they are, because that's what kids do. They're meant to mirror back to us parts of ourselves that need tending to. So take the invitation, do the hard work consistently. There's no finish line, and know that I'm rooting for you. You matter, you're loved, you're important, and you're enough. And I thank you for joining me today. Be well. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, D, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.